Hi, let's get started. I'm Scott Stevens. I'm here faculty at the ETC, and I've been working with Elizabeth Forward from the beginning, which is now over 4 years. And Bart, correct me where I get this one wrong. I think the whole thing started when our past director, Don Marinelli, went to Allegheny Intermediate Unit. And there were 42, thank you, 42 superintendents from Western Pennsylvania school districts. And Don, if you've ever seen him, is a really dynamic speaker, and he's the kind of guy who can sell snow to Eskimos, and he just was talking about all the things we do here at the ETC, and said he would love to partner with districts and work to see if any of the things we're doing could get out. And his favorite phrase was when people would come here, and a lot of times to see what's going on, and say, well, we really like to do this. And he'd go up to him and he'd say, well, can you paint the walls? And of course, a lot of people go, well, no, we got to get permission for that. I said, well, then you're not going to do it. So anyway, he said, invited anybody to call him and come on over and start a discussion. And one superintendent came, and that was Bart. And that was the start of it. And we've had now, I can't even count them, but upwards of 7 or 8 student projects. And how many of you know how the projects work at the ETC? Not many, huh? For you? Okay. So we're very project-based, and after the first semester where students have a core of classes, and that's all they do, just our classes, they then have 3 semesters where they work on projects. And the project is essentially a full-time job with a client. And we've had scores over the years. This is our 15th year, probably 100 different kinds of clients from, we've got projects now with Allegheny Health Network, UPMC on the health side, and we've gone and done things with the Army Telemedicine and Research Center, all over the place, and a lot of schools. So what our teams do is, clients will come up and say, well, we kind of want, they may not even know exactly, but we've got this space and we want something to be new about it. And that happened about 7 years ago when MacArthur funded a project to work with the Chicago City Public Library, their downtown branch, the main branch, to take a space kind of a little larger than this room and turn it into something different. And that became U Media, which is a site where school children, high school children, after school spend time there. They can check out camcorders, they have sound room, all kinds of new media kinds of things. And that was a really interesting space. And one of the things that the library found out was after they put that in, those kids were actually checking out more books in that same kind of area where they had been coming. It had been a youth space. And one of the first things that Bart and Todd did was to, you visited there, didn't you? And so on. And they came back and they said, we got to do this in our library. And they wanted to turn it into something similar in a game space. And the two of them were in the library talking, and they had a librarian who had been there very long, was a few years away from retirement. And so as we're talking in the library, she walks up to the superintendent and assistant superintendent and goes, shh. You made the change, and she retired. So let's see. So from our perspective, the projects, our student projects, we have educational goals, and the client has needs. And for the client, it's a gamble, because we say up front that since this is an educational project, we guarantee you nothing. Now, our students almost always, and you'll hear from Bart and Todd, produce something that we call a playable prototype. Something that may be good enough as is, maybe need a little extra polish. Usually, it's good enough as is, at least for a cooperative client like Elizabeth Forward is. And our students love the projects because they love seeing Elizabeth Forward students having fun with their games. They get this firsthand experience, they hear about how they enjoy it, and it's just been a great experience for them. The downside is when our students are done, they're done. We had an app that Apple updated iOS and it stopped working. We got nobody to fix it. Well, we actually do. I had to pull off one of our longtime research programs who fixed it. So that's kind of the downside of the relationship, and we're trying to work to have a permanent solution to that. So anyway, with that as kind of an introduction, I'll let Art first talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing and what they've been doing and the changes that have gone on there. I don't know if they're going to... We'll double up. They may be too modest. And I think about 4 years. You've been there 5 years now, right?
This is 6 years.
6 years?
6 years.
When they came here, out of 500 plus districts in the state of Pennsylvania, Elizabeth Ford was like in the middle, 250, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in 4 years, it moved up 100 spots.
Yeah.
To
from assessment. Yeah. So
in 4 years in terms of state assessment, and they do not teach to the test.
Yeah. Although, as I always say, I don't get too high or too low on tests because the tests really aren't testing kids; they're testing schools. So, I keep that in perspective. But that's what we're in. One of the, everybody has a narrative, and I want to thank Scott and Mike for being part of this, and the relationship that we built with CMU has been really powerful. And as the screen goes blank, thanks, Todd. I'll ad lib. Well, there was a picture there. No, everybody has a narrative, and the story that Scott told about us meeting people, but I think speaks greater to the issue of what's happening in public schools. That for the most part, years and years ago, when I first started many years ago, schools were kind of closed systems. You were getting tax money from your communities. You really didn't look outside beyond the walls of doing anything differently because you didn't have to. And there was a point when we decided that we really needed to look at what we were doing and what our business model was. We're a corporation. I have a $40 million budget. And what we were doing and the model that we were using really needed to change. And that's really how this started. I mean, there was a charge of what the problem was, and we went over and met with a lot of people, including Jesse Schell. And Jesse framed it so beautifully because he said to us, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What are you trying to do? And what we were trying to do is reinvent ourselves in an era where technology played such an important role in children's lives. So the first thing that we thought about, I love the classics. And I read, many years ago, the allegory of the cave, about coming out of the cave. And, when you come out of the cave, the world's different. And when you try to come back in and tell people about it, they didn't understand. And that's sort of been a narrative that we've talked about. And then we met Dawn, as Scott said, in a very unique situation. And we hit it off immediately. So, and that idea of cave was, can you paint the walls, Bart? Todd, what can you do? Can you do that? So that was the beginning of meeting people and changing. One of the other narratives that we had, schools don't come out, most administrators don't come out of their districts much. They sort of hunker down, they do their thing. I had a major crisis today in my district. It was terrible. We're on the news. Probably you'll see it, 6 o'clock news. It's over, we hope. But I think it's important to continue, just continue plugging away at what we do. But we met a lot of powerful people that were influential in our lives. And that's sort of the theme that Dawn talked about was Frontierland, from Frontierland to Tomorrowland. And that's sort of what we were trying to do. But we met a lot of people there. Dawn, of course, Greg Baer from the Grable Foundation right here. I don't know what's wrong with our screen there, but Greg is a tremendous asset to this region. If you're not familiar with what Greg has done for the Remake Learning Council, it's a huge group of school districts and professionals in the region that are supporting kids and learning in the Pittsburgh area. Just a phenomenal guy. Of course, we got Scott in there. Got to have Drew. Drew played, after Dawn left, Drew played a really important part in our continued partnership with him. Nikki and after from Zulama, we made a connection. And then what happened is we started to evolve this idea that for us to change or for us to look differently, we had to connect with businesses and companies that were doing things. No longer was it enough for us to just say what we're doing is good enough. We needed to move beyond that. So this partnership with CMU was really an outgrowth of us connecting with Jesse, play testing games, having his staff come out and talking to our children, working with Nikki from Zulama, some of the other things that we did. And I think that was a movement that really is a little bit different than most schools would say. And it's about bringing on people that, for the most part, some of our staff were kind of reluctant at first to do this. We were breaking their mold. We were making them come out of the cave, and it was hard for them. So we want to show you just a little video, and hopefully it'll work. Do I need to tie that to the sound? It should be good. I think that we are in a real dramatic change in public education.
In the last 100 years, education hasn't changed much.
Schools are so traditional. We have tan walls, desks in rows. Why?
It's almost like one size fits all.
When you're sitting in an average classroom, you kind of let your mind wander.
You just sit down, stare at the clock, and do your time.
Here at Elizabeth Ford, we are trying to reinvent education.
The world is flying by us, and I think we need to make sure that we're keeping up.
We need to create exciting environments for children to have an opportunity to learn different and creative things.
Our main goal is engaging kids.
We're taking the world that they experience on the outside and are bringing it here.
We want to have technologies that the children do not have at home.
These spaces that we've created here at Elizabeth Forward High School are new colors, new learning opportunities. That's what gets kids excited about learning.
It's about being in school and wanting to come to school. We want them here.
In November of 2011, the Grable Foundation gave us a grant to redo a classroom. This was the start of the changing of the environment in all of our spaces. It's the Entertainment Technology Academy, known as the Gaming Room.
Where all the creative classes and the gaming classes come together.
Got all these different entertainment technology classes for like programming.
I'm taking 3D modeling.
The whole entertainment side of our economy is being taught right here.
These classes are actually being taught in college, so it is a great head start to get it in high school.
This is a cooperative, informal learning environment.
You walk in, you see colorful walls, you see tons of couches.
Well, as you can see, there are no desks in here.
I didn't think this was a classroom. I thought this was sort of like a teacher's lounge or something.
Class sizes are a little bit smaller.
A comfortable environment for learning. It helped me learn more, actually.
Students feel as if it's more about them.
It inspires you to actually give school a shot.
We are really thrilled to have the only small lab in a public school in the nation.
We bring the students here so they have a hands-on experience with everything ranging from language arts, prefixes and suffixes to math skills.
The small lab is a situated multimedia arts learning lab where children come down and experience embodied learning. Embodied learning is a new thought in education, that everything that we remember is through some body experience that we have.
Our children have a hard time with vocabulary. We're trying to teach them that all words are made up of parts, prefixes, suffixes. So they come in and they play a game called Prefix Pagoda.
There's a short throw projector that shines down onto the mat, which projects the software that you're running from a PC. Then you use a tool called a wand.
With the motion capture technology cameras that we have here in the room,
That are picking up a reflection from the wand, and that's how the computer and the camera know which word the student is picking up.
We are in the Elizabeth Ford Media Center. It used to be our high school library. It had probably 60 sets of encyclopedias, 200 dictionaries. It was not very engaging.
It's different from a regular library because I don't think a regular library has like a recording studio where you can go over and like sing or like make raps or come and make a video.
Students can grab a mentor and go in and explore these areas on their own.
We're in a sound studio where basically we record all our music.
We do hip hop, rap. At times I'll try to do R&B.
We're in Elizabeth Ford High School's Media Center in the Visual Arts Studio. And when it first came here, all the students were wowed by it. Everyone comes down here.
I really enjoy working with the green screen and special effects because it's like really fun.
This could actually be something in my future, working with cameras and doing the lights and the sound. Because I guess you can say I'm starting to fall in love with it.
The technology here at Elizabeth Forward High School has created opportunities for students that haven't existed in the past.
It's just remarkable that we get to experience something that's this unique.
We're seeing creativity come alive again in the students.
So important that students who are struggling have another way to learn.
I used to be a compulsory school skipper, but ever since they put the studio in and stuff, I've been here every day.
Freshman year I had a GPA of .857 and now I started out the year with honor roll.
These things help me learn about what I need to do to get the career I want in my future.
It's the kind of thing that's energized this building and energized the staff.
Students are coming to expect these kinds of learning spaces.
Whatever we want the students to learn, we think that they're going to be able to master those concepts better in these spaces. We're giving the kids technology skills for the future.
We believe that we can have children really change the way they approach education, they look at education. We want to help our children to be engaged in the activities, excited about learning and excited about being in the world that they live in. We believe in kids, and that's really what it's about. One of the things that we did too was we documented everything we did as we went through, and this was just sort of the beginning of some of our spaces, but we don't have a lot of resources. You know, we're kind of a rural district. We only have about 2,400 children south of Pittsburgh, and it's a lot of farmland, you know, around us. But we found a way to recreate spaces, redesign activities for our kids to engage them. We also, you know, we've done a lot of initiatives, and I'm going to let Todd talk a little bit about the Entertainment Technology Academy, but we actually were probably one of the first schools in the country to institute this program that Nikki Nafta called Zulama put into place. And we actually have kids learning how to build and create games and the apps that go with that. And it's really structured around almost the concept that is ETC's teaming. So I'll let Todd talk a little bit about that.
And I have to say that Dr. Rocco and I were both traditional principals. We wanted white walls, desk in a row, and when we came down to visit the ETC 4 or 5 years ago, we were just, you know, Dawn said, you know, why aren't schools looking like this? And it kind of made us think, you know, we need to change what we're doing. We were losing kids to cyber charter schools. We had dropout rates really high. We wanted to change what we were doing in our schools. So in March of 2012, we redid a classroom. This was a boring white wall kind of classroom with computers around the perimeter of the room, and we wanted to re-energize. And this is, again, the first space that we changed. And we offered in the middle of the year this gaming curriculum where kids learn about 3D programming, 2D programming, 2D, 3D art, digital art, and storytelling. And now, after almost now going on 3 years now, a little over 3 years, what's happening is we have internship. We have an internship class where kids are working with nonprofit organizations across Pittsburgh. These kids are actually making some really cool games using Game Maker and Unity and so forth. We just saw some of their polished games a couple weeks ago. They presented at Robert Morris, and we were blown away what these kids were creating. The next thing in the video talked about is our EF Media Center, and we had a very traditional high school. No kids really ever went into our library except for English, the research done in the English classrooms. And again, Scott's correct, Dr. Rocco and I used to get shushed by the old librarian. And we moved her tables one time because we were having a meeting and we got like screamed at by her because we moved her tables. Now you would go in and these tables are moved around every single day. It's you know, every space. And we have a sound studio. And the sound studio was a space where there was newspapers and magazines for the last 60, 70 years that no one ever looked at. They were so dusty. So we took that out. We took the shelves out and we put a sound studio. But I never dreamed that the sound studio would really catch on at our high school. I mean, we're a rural school district, but there's kids in there learning, and there's not a class to learn how to use this equipment. The kids are teaching each other, and it's incredible.
I know I'm not on a mic, but that's okay, but I think it's a really important concept. These skills that they're learning we're not teaching them in a class, and that's sort of how we wanted the structure. We wanted, you know, the kids to take on that idea of learning independently, because that's how they're learning now. You know, if you have an iPhone, if you have an iPad, there's no instructions. You go in and mess around with it, and this concept was based on Nick Ito's book, Hanging Out, Messing Around, and Geeking Out, which was really patterned after the U Media Center in Chicago, because the kids weren't coming into the space, and they needed a place for the kids to hang out, mess around, and geek out, and that's really what our kids are doing. The other value added, we put a cafe in our library. Now, maybe to most people, they don't think that's pretty cool, but to our kids, that was cool. And the other thing that we did is our life skills children, our children of the exceptionalities, run the cafe. So it's become a transition activity for these young people. And it's really, this whole thing, you know, you talk about kismet, you know, like having this thing that happened and it like changed your world. It's changed our world. I mean, it's put us on the map with doing things that really uniquely for children. It's been really powerful.
I had a kid tell me yesterday how cool it is. How could people not like being here? I'm sitting here in a library on my iPad, sitting on a couch, watching TV, sipping a cup of coffee, doing my homework. Like, you know, most kids in high school aren't doing those kind of things. It was just kind of step back from listening to an 11th grader tell me that yesterday. I was amazed. Space bar, yeah, that's good. The other thing,
I was doing it to see if
is
you were
the
paying attention.
yes, the one-to-one iPad learning initiative. Every student in our district, K to 12, actually has an iPad. They take them home over the summertime. We really look at it as a learning initiative, not a technology initiative. We do personalized learning. We use a company called eSpark Learning out of Chicago to help us personalize learning for every student in the classroom. Just an amazing initiative that we're seeing huge growth in our test scores.
And a lot of schools will say, how can you afford that? We looked at how many units we had. That's okay, there's a mic here. We looked at how many units we had in the district, how many actually pieces of hardware, and we reallocated money to lease these things from Apple, and it's actually saved us money. So it's just a different way of doing it, because we always were buying them. Well, after you buy them after so many years, so now we're leasing them and so many release them back, or we sell them back. You know, so it's had a different.
eSpark Learning is an interesting company out of Chicago because they don't actually create apps. They go on the App Store. Teachers don't have enough time to go through all the apps on the App Store. So what they've done is they look at the most effective ones. They've categorized them regarding what common standards, PA core standards or common core standards, what grade level, and then they create quests for each kid according to their weaknesses. But again, they're not building apps; they're finding the apps on the App Store.
And if you're in any public educators here, what we will tell you, we're really hoping that this will help our growth model. So we'll be able to see individual growth from children. That'll help us to manage that for children.
What we're seeing is our kids that have always struggled with school, we're seeing huge gains with those kids. It's pretty incredible. Our Dream Factory in our middle school we put in a couple years ago. We combined art, computer science, and technology education. And it's been incredible to see kids making and creating, designing, and making things. And one quick example I'll give you, actually this is a group here, OmniCloud was an ETC group, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But one of the projects is a chocolate bar. Kids, can you imagine designing this is 11, 12, 13-year-olds, designing a candy bar on a computer in a 3D world, printing it to a 3D printer, holding that in their hands of the prototype of the candy bar. If they like it, good. If they don't, they can go redesign and print another one out. Then they put it onto a vacuum mold, create a real thin piece of plastic, creates a mold. They go to foods class now. They learn about chocolate and pouring chocolate into their mold. They go to art class and they're learning Photoshop now in middle school. They create a logo for their chocolate company. They put the nutritional facts around the wrapper. They design the wrapper for their chocolate bar. Then they go to computer class and they create a 30-second commercial about their candy bar and why it tastes so much better than the other kids, even though they all taste the same. And they create a business plan and a business card. 2.5 weeks, that whole project. We're breaking down the silos in our school. You know, there's no more semester of art, semester of tech ed. Now the kids can see how they all integrate. And one of the reasons why we did that in our Dream Factory is we didn't have one dynamic teacher that could do it all. So we used our strengths of our teachers. You know, we have a teacher in our tech ed room that can build and make anything. Our art teacher's amazing with designing things, but our woodshop teacher, our tech ed teacher wasn't very good at that. So we used all our different teachers to create this Dream Factory at the middle school.
There's another thing that's important too, and I think it talks about the generation of kids that we're in right now, that we're working with right now. They do want to, they want to give back. They want to share. It's that, they care about the world that they live in. We have one little girl who created a iPad holder for a wheelchair. And we talked about we need to market this, but the funny thing is her iPad holder with which had lights on it, which I liked, but it has an iPad on it.
A little bling on it.
Little bling on it. She wanted that. As simple as making an iPad or an iPhone holder. That we bet on plastic. We partner with a small plastic company that's in the region to try to do these things. Again, thinking differently, coming out of the cave, moving away from like our traditional learning that's helped our kids.
One last thing too, every kid in our middle school gets robotics, they all get programming, they're all learning Python to some degree in 8th grade, using our microcontrollers and Arduinos. Every kid's getting it. I don't care if they're the gifted kids, the special needs kid, the average kid in the middle, every kid is getting this in our high school, and they're excelling. We're seeing kids in 6th grade that maybe struggle on the reading exam that are excellent programmers. They're unbelievable. And you see that light go off, like, I'm actually good in school. Maybe I struggle in reading, but I'm a good programmer. So it's great to see.
Again, something that's changed the culture of that community, that school.
The small lab, you saw that on the video. It's a short throw projector that shoots on the floor. Motion capture technology. We use the wands. And what we're doing is working with several teams here at the ETC to create games to help our kids learn difficult content. So the teams actually, this was actually the first team, Brainstem, and I'll talk about them in a second. But they've actually worked with our middle school teachers and our elementary teachers around content. It's really data driven. You know, what are our kids struggling with, and how can a team here at CMU develop a game in the small lab to help our kids master content?
One of the things that we did was and the gentleman to the right, far right, you're going to talk about connecting and meeting people, but David Birch of 11 Small Lab is a company. And when you purchase these games, there are approximately 18 or 19 simulations in this package. Well, what we did was, that wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to, as Todd said, tailor it, and that's where we made the connection with the Entertainment Technology Center, and we started to build these teams. So these people from the graduate program came in and again, tailored it to the needs, not only of the teachers, but of the kids. So they were talking to teachers about developing, and then they would go back and play test with the kids. And they liked certain things, they didn't like certain things, they came back, they made some modifications, they tweaked it. But that was a great thing. For me personally, I think Todd as well, it was a value added for our kids. Having graduate students from Carnegie Mellon University come and hanging out, talking about building games and building this technology, you know how powerful that is for young people? And why the middle school? When do kids make decisions about life? Middle school for the most part. If you try to reach a kid when he's in high school, it's really going to be hard. But middle school, you start to scratch the surface about where we want. So there was a deliberate attempt and a deliberate way to do this. Do you want to talk about or maybe it's on there, about your collaboration?
Oh, no, it's not, but I'll talk about it now.
You're talking it now.
So the small lab, we were the first public school in the world to actually have a small lab, but now Pittsburgh has the most small labs anywhere in the world. There's actually 10 small labs in Pittsburgh. And so what we did was we formed a Pittsburgh Small Lab Consortium, just grassroots effort. Let's pull all of our expertise together. So Seneca Valley School District has one, West Allegheny, Pittsburgh Public actually has 3, McKeesport has 2, Elizabeth Ford, Borough School District just purchased one, Penn Hills just put one in, and Mapletown, a school district in Greene County, south here in Pittsburgh, very rural school district, is actually putting one in too. So there's actually 10 in Pittsburgh. So,
and what we're doing now is once these simulations or games are created, we're sharing them throughout the region, which was something that is a little bit beyond, I think, David Birchfield's envisioning of small lab, but and we've had some conversations about that, but he's okay with it, I guess. Ready? Yeah.
So what is it like to have an ETC team at your school? You know, Scott talked about, you know, what these projects look like, and we have a ball with the ETC team. You know, after each of the final presentations, the rituals, we go to Cheesecake Factory with the team. Thank you. But you know, when they're here, they're eating in our lunchroom in our cafeterias. They're spending time with our kids. We always come down for the halves presentation and the finals presentation. It is a lot of work on the school district's part. I mean, we want to make sure we are good clients to them and they get a great experience. But it's really helped our teachers think differently. Dr. Rocco talked about that. Our teachers are now thinking about, how do I change the way I teach this? Can I use a game? Can I, you know? So it's been such a rewarding back and forth with the kids. And again, this is OmniCloud, a team OmniCloud from a couple years ago, or a couple semesters ago, with one of our kids. The first team that we ever worked with was called Pixel Pushers. And if you don't know what Minecraft is, just ask the 4-year-old and they'll tell you what Minecraft is. And they'll probably lose you after 10 seconds. But we had no idea really what Minecraft was 2-3 years ago. And they reached out to us. Again, this is the first team that kind of worked with us to some degree. And we taught our teachers in middle school how to use Minecraft.edu. And then it just took off. We had high school students using, instead of everybody doing a PowerPoint now, Minecraft is an option. So if you want to create a video, you want to create an audio clip, you want to create a Minecraft world. Physics project.
Whatever. Yeah. They'd use Minecraft.
So our teachers were trained by the team, and we try to implement it from topographical lines of maps, flying above the world and seeing those lines. We had a kid actually create a Minecraft world modeled after the book The Giver. And the teacher was so blown away that that student actually presented to all the other classrooms the book The Giver using a Minecraft world. So pretty amazing to see this first team and what they've done and helped us transform our teachers.
And again, thinking differently about traditional education settings and what we do, a lot of schools will close their doors, but we didn't do that. Got to watch our time. This was Brainstem, again, our first team. And some of those people in that team right now are currently working in all over the world, probably in various gaming industries.
Yeah,
Nisha's right now developed a game
for shell games.
So she was phenomenal. I mean, but again, having those folks around our children and the games that they pushed out are still being used and are very successful.
The Kites team did an amazing job in our small lab, created additional games, and also created a customizable tool where teachers can put anything down on the floor now in our small lab. We can put a map of Germany, we can put American troops on top of there, and have a discussion of what that would look like. This team did a great job, great group of kids. OmniCloud, they actually worked in our Dream Factory, and if you see in their hands, they're spin tops. They developed an app for our Dream Factory where kids design their own spin tops, print them to a 3D printer, and they actually work. And then there's a competition.
Which I think is the big thing. The kids at the end of this at the end of the creation, they have a game to see whose top can spin the longest. And again, believe it or not, some of our kids didn't know what tops were. I mean, you have to understand, this is a very kind of a rural area. We've had some kids, we took them around to the area, they've never been to Pittsburgh, if you can believe that. I mean, that's really true. So not only exposing them to these types of activities, but also the cultural experience of them dealing with some of the young people from ETC.
Team Infinity we're working on a project at our middle school, the Energy Lab. We're trying to create a very interactive energy lab to teach kids about energy and earth and space concepts. This team last semester created this magic dome, a touch dome. It's huge. And the kids the game is you're actually placing solar panels onto this dome, and you have to keep the cities and towns powered up. An amazing project.
One of the things I want to say too, a lot of these things with the teams wouldn't happen without Scott and Mike and some of the other folks, because they've offered us opportunities to say, hey, because we've had a legacy of success here. We make this happen, and I think we provide great opportunities for our students there, the graduate students. But it's also about because it's resource driven. So we go out and look for companies, organizations that want to support some of these things. And again, that's a completely different model than most schools would use. Our win, there's a win-win for us. We're getting some of these games and they're helping our children. The other win, we're being exposed to the kids, but there's also a win for ETC because their kids are being exposed to an environment that I'm telling you is right for learning for children, because this is how they do what they do.
Several administrators in the area asked me, how do we have a dome? There's other things we're building within our energy lab, and we'd love to give those plans to other schools and help you design your own energy lab. So if that's something you're interested in, see us afterwards. This team has been working with our small lab this semester, and there's several programmers on this team, and they've been amazing. The three games that they've actually created 2 language arts grammar games, and then a math game that I can't wait to see. I can see middle school kids in it, but I can't wait to put a kindergartner or first grader into this game. I mean, it's just...
You cannot go in the small lab with kindergartners, I'm telling you right now. You can, but you better bring earmuffs because it is so loud. They have such a blast in there.
Yeah, they get so excited. You want to take this one?
No, you
Oh, okay. This team's working right now with our energy lab, and how it's so abstract for students to think about digging in the earth, and how far is sand rock, how far is the Marcellus shell, how far is the oil, what does that look like? So this team is actually creating this arcade kind of simulation in our energy lab for kids to be able to drill, actually shoot sound waves down into the earth and figure out where the sand rock is, where are the minerals, and so forth. And then they can take core samples of the earth, and then they actually have to drill down and power up the city. It's incredible to see.
But it is a game. I mean, it's a huge arcade game that's in our classroom.
So relatively, if you wanted something like that in your school, again, we'll have the plans and everything to be able to distribute that to help people. But for less than $5,000, you could actually, with a computer and everything, you can have this simulation in your school. And again, I think it's very hard for kids to look at a picture and say, okay, 1,000 feet down, 3,000 feet, this is where these layers of rock are, and so forth. This game will teach the kids that. So the kids are really excited. Team Skylight was from last semester, and they had a hard time with creating a music game in the small lab. And they really, at the very end, came through amazing. And our music teachers love this game. But now we're using the small lab to be able to teach kids about music and notes. And it was a pretty hard task to do.
I think music was it was a push in that space. And they struggled a bit. But, they finalized. But again, that's part of the process too. If we stood up here and said there were all successes, there weren't. There are struggles. But we learn from that, right? We learn from the failures we have. And I think that's one of the things we pushed our teachers, we pushed our kids, certainly, that in that there are failures, but through that you'll obviously succeed, we hope. But we want, I think, Mike, you want to make some points?
I'm not going to show the slides, but I will just wrap up with a couple of comments.
Yeah, and I'd like to make one last thing. I really, like Dr. Rocco said, with Mike and Shirley and Scott and Drew, and these teams have really helped our school transform. And again, our school would not be transforming if it wasn't for you guys. So thank you.
So I want to make sure that there's going to be time for questions for both Bart and Todd. But I do have extra slides to talk about 2 play tests we ran that actually had a couple different final points. Those slides will get pushed out when we push out all the slides to the website, so you can look up details later. One game was about systems thinking. It was tested at Elizabeth Forward. One of the questions you may have if you're in a different school district is, what can we do with the ETC? The easiest way to get started is just to test some of the work here, get involved, have your teachers work with us and see that, oh yeah, this stuff works, this stuff doesn't. The systems thinking game worked pretty well, except the art wasn't exactly polished, but the puzzles were very, very interesting. So interesting, in fact, that Shell Games bought the rights from the students, polished the game, and it's now released as Water Bears for 99 cents for your iPad. So if you care about a game that started at Elizabeth Forward with some testing and now is out there for everybody, look up Water Bears. The other experience was a DARPA Engage game. It was funded by DARPA. Same reason that Bart brought up, that in middle school, lots of kids say, we don't care about science anymore. Eric actually worked with us on DARPA Engage projects. And DARPA said, keep kids interested in science by having games for them. We tested those games at Elizabeth Forward. It's a great way to keep this partnership going between the ETC and Elizabeth Forward. We learned from those tests how to do adaptive learning, which you might have heard about today. How can you have a game flow so that it's not too frustrating, it's not overly satisfying so it becomes boring, but it's in a good flow zone. So look up flow zone if you care, look up adaptive learning. Come talk to us because we can tell you more about those. And the kids at Elizabeth Forward really help with that. The last thing is, tonight from 6 to 8 p.m., you get to see, if you care, Infinity and AW7. You can see their work. So you can see 2 Elizabeth Forward projects and what they're doing. Infinity is in the process of getting torn down here and set up in your space. So I don't know what they're going to actually have in their room, but the students will be here. You can talk about their projects. So hopefully you get to stay between 6 and 8 p.m. because then you'll get to see some of the projects, and 2 of them are connected to Elizabeth Forward. So at this point, I'm actually going to turn the mic back to you guys because I think you're the interesting story, not Scott and me. and we can open up for questions.
So I have the room mic, so you don't have to pass.
Oh, okay, perfect. You don't need that.
That's helpful.
I have a question, with this changing the culture and this wonderful transformation story. You had to get the buy-in of the staff and the parents. And can you talk a little bit about that?
We lied to them. we told them it was all going to be better and fine, and they no. Actually, really, there's a lot of people that think our school board was really supportive. At first, they thought we were crazy. Well, we are crazy, and we just wanted to change. It was about kids, really, and I think that one of the things that we try to do is build teacher leaders and principal leaders. That we have now created a culture there where teachers now create and do things on their own because they know we're going to support them. I mean, if they mess up, that's okay. I have teachers, and it's just not in our computer games. I mean, it's believe it or not, it's been a contagious thing. I got teachers now running a garden in our elementary school. It's an after-school program. They're teaching kids how to grow and plant. I mean, but that's run by the teachers. It wasn't Bart Rocco's idea. It wasn't Todd's idea.
And those teachers are actually in our fab lab at our high school
learning how to
about
build
digital fabrication to build boxes, and so yeah.
And I think when Todd and I first got there, and I hired Todd to come on board, and it was like the place really they didn't believe in themselves. And I even walked out of the meeting and first found them. I said, "Man, we got a long way to go." We started laying some groundwork. We looked at data. We laid out an instructional model. We did some things instructionally and from an educational standpoint that we needed to do. And then we just started to gradually push these things in. What we did is recreated these spaces, sort of like Dawn said. Paint a wall. Just try it, see what happens.
Craig Bear gave us the best advice, I think. Pick one program, one room at a time. We wanted to change our entire school, every classroom. And, pick one room, one program. We picked 2 teachers, and that took off to the media center. But people thought we were out of our minds. Like, why are you painting these rooms this color? And that we heard that for the first year and a half. And then they're like, can we have our room painted?
Yeah.
Can I have new furniture and cool furniture?
The other thing is you talk about, I call it building legs, getting legs. And we applied for some awards and we got them. We're one of 57 school districts in the country that's the League of Innovative Schools for Digital Promise. So we go all around the country and visit schools. We just got back last week from Vancouver, Washington, to see what's going on technologically there. We've been awarded an Apple Distinguished Program Award, which is like unheard of for a whole district to get it. And it's not because we have iPads. We got it before we got the iPad. So, I think that the faculty sort of started to say, hey, we're doing some different things here. We're on the map. We've had, and I kid you not, at least 250 school districts visit us.
This year.
Yeah. We had to have tour dates like once a month because it was too insane.
Now we're doing every other month because it's just too much.
Well, he thinks he's doing it. I'm done. I'm going to do maybe one every 3 months.
Let me say something. It really comes down to leadership at the top and the policies that they set or don't set. In the case of the iPad, not only do the students have it at school, they can take it at home, and they can keep it all summer. And about a year ago, I wrote a story that LA had tried an experiment with a couple of thousand schools. I see some of these people did. And I think it was some middle school kid broke into it because they wanted to keep kids away from Facebook and stuff like that, which is ridiculous because all of them have, a smartphone. They're in it anyway. And so I asked Bart and Todd, well, what do you do about it? You worried about it? Do you have it, restricted? They said, no. We give them classes in responsible use of the internet. How smart can that be? Because they're going to get it anyway. Teach them how they should use it properly and let them go.
Digital citizenship, digital efficacy. And that's teaching teachers that too. Yeah.
This is an awesome and very compelling story. At the same time, I'm a little worried about this panacea technology. Everything great, worldview that ends in rainbows shooting out of screens everywhere. I'm curious what has not worked. What do kids You should just sit them down with a book. That's how they should learn that thing.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of research, especially out of Tufts University, on using digital technologies to read in comparison to using books. And there's not a lot of convincing evidence to support either ones were successful. We do know that if kids are exposed to language at an early age, that, and in particular reading, that they're going to have a tremendous amount of success on, academic, on tests, in their percentiles will increase. We know that's there. The problems that we've had, obviously we've had some teachers that were reluctant to move in this direction. It's not all rainbows and unicorns and all that stuff, and I'm not. Hopefully that came off that way. It wasn't too, but again, because there has been failure. So there have been people that were not on board. We've had some parents, and not a lot though. I mean, you have to understand from a political standpoint. People drive down through their community, they see a school, and they see the school building, and they say, "Oh, I'm paying tax dollars for that." Now, in our district, they drive down, they see the school, and they also see their 4 kids with 4 iPads. So if they pay $3,000 a year or $4,000 a year in income tax or tax for real estate, they're also getting a value added there. So that was a really conscious effort to try to think of that. So, but again, convincing that. Have we had damage? Oh yeah. We had 10%. But we self-insured with parents paying, and it's been okay.
You would still see traditional things going on in our schools. We've created really cool spaces for digital media and digital fabrication and those things, but you would still see traditional things. But you still would walk in a kindergarten classroom and see a kindergarten kid maybe airdropping an assignment to their teacher, which still blows me away. Like it's no big deal to me. I'll just airdrop to my teacher.
But remember, that's an environmental thing too. We're trying to erase this carbon footprint. We're trying to eliminate paper use. We're trying to, that's, and again, if you don't know this is the case, but printing contracts in schools are hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So if I can cut that back 20%, I'm spending money that I can use in other things for kids, maybe provide more social services. You have to understand, we also are about 44% economically disadvantaged. So we're not a wealthy school district, but we're doing wealthy things. We're doing great things for kids that sort of level the playing field for our children. And there's nothing more exciting to see a graduate of EF come to me or a resident who lives in my community who's proud of, I live there too. So I go to church there, I go to the supermarket there, I take pride in that. Sometimes it's dangerous, but in that I have a vested interest in the community to help our children. So that's part of the game, yeah.
So I'm in higher ed, of course, as you know, Penn State. So the magic of the and I think is really important because it's a mix, it's and. I would say to you, I would challenge you, how would you frame this up a couple of ways? One is to exactly do that. Show the really good horse sense, the business sense of we're saving money in these areas, but we're applying it over here, and it's going to have long-term benefit. It's going to have job opening, doors to open jobs, that kind of thing. So I would say that would be really, I'd be curious to see how when those hordes of school districts come to you, how do you frame it really well to show them the real sense of it, fiduciary, everything else. And then the second thing is higher eds, and I will only speak for my own, have this love-hate too, because there's still some very traditional things that go on a traditional college campus, and then there is new technology. Most of the new technology ends up with the non-traditional students that are adults studying completely online, which is really interesting. How would you try and share and make that bridge between being a really forward-thinking K-12 and then what students might experience when they hit a 400-person lecture class?
That's a great question. I mean, I'll address it first. How much time we have to talk about it. I had a student visit me last week, his first year at Pitt, and he just said to me, "Thanks so much for providing me an opportunity." He said, "Because I feel like I'm light years." Now he's in his major's business, so there's 400 kids in that class. He said, I feel like we're light years ahead with some of the stuff. And he's thinking differently about, and again, that generation idea that he's in, giving back. He wants to come back and talk to kids about how you integrate with just exactly what you said. The problem is, and not the problem, but the issue is this is how kids are experiencing life now. And I have a son who's 28. And this was a little bit beyond him. But he was actually a graduate student at Berkeley, and I was telling him about some of the stuff that we're doing, and I said, you've got to create these things, Phil. You've got to get ready. This is coming, and we battled between that. And then he's finally realized, learning is ubiquitous. That's what we want our children to know, that you can learn anywhere, all the time, in any setting, at any time, and this technology provides that for them. I think universities are getting it.
I think that's a great way to end.
Thank you.
It's ubiquitous.
Thanks.